This is the business of pop culture, where we explore the intersection of entertainment, media, and consumer engagement. Hey Julia, this week we're talking about games again, but this one is a real classic, Super Mario Brothers, the movie. Tell me all about it.
Well, second movie, strictly speaking, but everybody ignores the 1993 live action, and for good reason. So the Super Mario Bros. Movie has just become the biggest grossing gaming adaptation in cinema history, sort of double jumping over the previous holder of the title, the Sonic the Hedgehog movies. The latest global box office numbers have it currently grossing over $700 million. It's very much expected to crack the $1 billion threshold quite soon, and then probably about twice as much again once it goes to digital streaming.
So, I mean, we're talking about record-breaking stuff for a movie based on a game which I have little knowledge of Super Mario Brothers, but I don't think it has a huge narrative to it, does it? So how are they sort of creating this from this IP?
It does pretty much what I expect Nintendo wants this movie to do, which is mostly take already very overexposed IP. You know, Nintendo and especially the Super Mario brand are face of gaming almost, especially for early years gaming. And it's almost like a mood board for what the gaming experience is like. And in fact, watching it, I found myself wanting to have a controller in my hands again to control the characters on screen. So they're actually doing a really good job in creating more like a sort of referential smorgasbord for existing fans. So pleasing the parents who might have played these games in the 80s, as well as kids who might be completely new to this franchise experience, and just letting them know what they're going to get out of this game.
So there's a reason why we're talking about games quite a lot in this series. I mean, this is the era of game adaptations and game IP becoming films, TV shows, and so on and so forth. Talk to me a little bit about, how this movie fits into that.
We sort of had this conversation kick off in January when HBO launched their adaptation of The Last of Us, and it was kind of heralded as the thing that finally broke the curse of game adaptation. And of course, as we also wrote in our January 2023 Pop Culture Pulse, that narrative is a bit false because it's not like there hasn't been commercial success. So the aforementioned Hedgehog movies are examples of that at the cinema, or even Sony's Uncharted adaptation with Spider-Man actor Tom Holland, both of which ranked among the top 15 box office movies in cinemas last year. So I think what we're really just seeing is, as the gaming demographic, which is now a majority of all adult consumers, are aging into what is considered, the adult consumer market, these properties are just gaining in cultural relevance, and they're building and creating this market where gaming is now able to transcend into all entertainment sectors.
We've talked about, a lot of other quite mature IP franchises that are out there, but actually Nintendo have been late to this game, would you say? And why is that?
It's mostly because, frankly, they have been sufficiently and at many times extraordinarily successful by keeping their own closed ecosystem. Nintendo, up until 2016, was exclusively running their games on their own hardware. They are now, however, kind of pivoting into becoming a broad spectrum entertainment company, not unlike other, say, toy giants we've been seeing this year with the sort of movie and TV ambitions we've seen coming out of Hasbro with the Dungeons and Dragons movies, or Mattel with the upcoming Barbie movie. And Nintendo similarly are looking at what they have in the collective memory and the nostalgic value among adult consumers, and in trying to reach the next generation of, Gen Alpha consumers by bringing their IP into the broader entertainment ecosystem, not least of all with their theme parks, Super Nintendo World extensions into the Universal Studio parks in Japan and California. And so all of that is really just part of a plan of which Nintendo's vocalized as further utilizing the Nintendo IP.
So it's kind of interesting in the sense that you can see Nintendo sort of edging into Disney's territory, I guess. I mean, obviously Pokemon is the most successful franchise of all time, which people perhaps aren't aware of. It's much bigger than Star Wars and Marvel and so on.
There's been some recent movements now where they're actually bringing back classic Game Boy and Game Boy Advance titles from the 80s and 90s for their subscription model for Switch Gaming Online, which is sort of like, their version of Netflix for gaming for all the Nintendo titles. And that is an interesting development because previously we have seen these really seminal titles, including Pokemon games, just disappear from commercial availability. So, for instance, there's the gaming historian Phil Salvador, who noted on Twitter that actually a third of all the Pokemon games aren't currently available online. Now, by kind of launching into the broad entertainment growth, which I think Nintendo's putting a very firm foot towards, because in the summer of 2022, they bought Dynamos Pictures, which is a Tokyo-based visual production company, and they renamed that extension of their business into Nintendo Pictures. When you start looking into keeping these childhood properties alive through entertainment across all sectors, there's really a lot to do with the kind of active nostalgia that is tied to and engendered by these play properties. I mean, take Apple TV Plus's adaptation of the story of the licensing drama around Tetris in the 80s, which is really like a Cold War drama, but wrapped into this game that we all played growing up. And I think we're going to just see a lot more in these kind of product-led brands expanding into entertainment culture in the future.
As you said, Gen Alpha growing up now are going to come to Super Mario Brothers new and fresh, and they'll be creating their own memories, and therefore this whole sort of IP will become self-regenerating over the decades. Is this the end of new stories? Well, I think that's probably a subject for another episode of the Business of Pop Culture sometime in the future. Brilliant. Thanks so much for that, Julia, and I will see you next week.